Hi everyone, my name is Renee Zagorski, and I'm studying Buddhist art at the Kansas City Art Institute. The piece that I'm going to talk to you about today is the Ruyilun Guanyin Bodhisattva seated on a lotus. This piece is currently located at its home in the Nelson Atkins Museum in Kansas City, Missouri. However, its true home is located in the Henan province of China. The Ruyilun Guanyin is a fresco that was removed from the Chaisheng Monastery in Wexin, China. A fresco is a painting that is done on clay with pigments. This piece in particular boasts pigments of greens, reds, and possibly some blues. Frescoes are somewhat delicate in that they can easily crumble and chip away if not properly cared for. This fresco in particular is in fairly good condition, as it still holds much of its pigment and imagery. We are only missing slight detail in the hands, and at the base of the lotus is fairly faded, but it's still visible. Frescoes like this one are very prominent art pieces in monasteries and places of worship in China and other parts of Asia around 900 CE and later. This particular fresco dates between 907 and 960 CE, and would have served as what we consider an image of a role model or someone of guidance. The Ruyilun Guanyin pictured is actually called Avalokiteshvara, which means he is an image of compassion. Guanyin is the Chinese translation of Avalokiteshvara, and thus each Guanyin is specifically named to represent the origin. The Avalokiteshvara, according to Buddhism, is said to free all who suffer. Originally, this image of the Ruyilun Guanyin would have been pictured with attendants or servants around him. However, they were not removed as part of the fresco. Servants are iconic in large Buddhist depictions throughout Asia, as well as the lotus image, hand gestures, and body positions, and in the case of the Bodhisattva, jewelry as well. The ultimate goal of Buddhism is to achieve a state of enlightenment in which you stop the reincarnation process, and those who reach enlightenment are Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. The difference between a Bodhisattva and a Buddha is that the Bodhisattva reaches enlightenment, however they choose to act as a teacher to help other people reach enlightenment, while the Buddha reaches enlightenment and leaves the tangible world and enters into nirvana. In regards to the Ruyilun Guanyin, we can see he is a Bodhisattva primarily due to his depiction. Bodhisattvas usually lack the iconic snail shell curls of the Buddha and the urna and ushnisha that coincide with traditional Buddha depictions, which are his extended cranial topknot and the circle on his forehead. This Bodhisattva also has a couple of things that we don't see depicted on Buddhas: jewelry and headwear. In this depiction of the Bodhisattva, he is adorned with jewelry and earrings, which relates back to the story of the first Buddha, who originated from royalty, and upon seeing the suffering outside of his palace, he became a religious leader. This is why the Bodhisattva and Buddhas are often depicted with elongated earlobes. They were stretched from heavy jewelry that he would have worn in his early life. After pursuing his life of religious leadership, the Buddha, of course, renounced all worldly possessions and is no longer pictured with those. The Ruyilun Guanyin is very ornately adorned with jewelry and a large headpiece. In his headpiece, we see an Amitabha Buddha. The Amitabha is the Buddha of the Pure Land, which has its own section of Buddhism known as Pure Land Buddhism. This follows the basic principles of Buddhism and accepts the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, which are teachings regarding the path to happiness. Amitabha is pictured in the crown as a reference to the teachings of Pure Land Buddhism throughout the Ruyilun Guanyin. The crown is depicted as greatly adorned with jewelry and blue halos surrounding him, to depict a reverence of the figure. This type of imagery is also used in many other religions as well, particularly Catholicism, to represent sanctity or holy nature. At the very base of the fresco, we can notice the petals of the green lotus flower he is sitting upon. The lotus flower is a very common piece of imagery in Buddhism. It symbolizes the journey of the path of enlightenment, and as the lotus grows, it must push through the mud and grime in order to blossom, which Buddhists apply to the path of enlightenment, in that you must live a good life and push through the bad to achieve enlightenment, which would be the blossoming lotus. The Ruyilun Guanyin is depicted fairly fleshy in this fresco, in that his appendages curve where we normally would mimic an angular sense of realism. So as you can see here, his face is very round, his shoulders are kind of slumping down, and his appendages are rounded off, especially around the knees and the arms, which you can kind of see here. He is adorned with very loose-fitting robes, pigmented with red and green, and have very elegant drapery, somewhat representative of a waterfall drapery. He is seated in a meditation position, with the bottoms of his feet facing up, and his hands, although mostly disappearing from wear, holds a wheel or a ball on the clouds, and is identified as a semitani. So here is where his hands would have rested. The image is worn down so much that that's not really present anymore. The sensamati, or wish-granting jewel, which was considered so powerful that it was hidden so as not to fall into the wrong hands. Usually, with the depiction of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, hand gestures are made to depict the turning of the wheel of the law, or the laws of Buddhism, or to depict the action of speaking. Certain hand gestures mean different things. The turning of the wheel of the law is one hand gesture, and the most common one is the hand gesture for teaching. This anatomy is somewhat special in that it is an unusual artifact of Buddhism and is not often depicted. Overall, the Ruyilun Guanyin is somewhat special in terms of stylistic approach, with the medium of fresco and the addition of color, and the sanatami is one thing not often seen depicted. However, the iconic symbols of Buddhism are very prominent and let us know what this image represents by means of association and the Buddhist icon. The lotus in particular is represented throughout many Buddhist works as an icon for reaching nirvana, as well as the halo effect that's often seen again throughout much of Buddhism. We can compare that to specific icons in other religions as well. Again, like I'd mentioned, Catholicism uses that halo image a lot to depict holy or sanctity, in which the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas both can have that halo image due to their enlightenment status and either the reaching of nirvana or the teachings of enlightenment. It's a very spiritual, overwhelming depiction of Avalokitesvara, and I would highly recommend visiting him in person at the Nelson Atkins Museum. He's very overwhelming in presence, as he's very large. I would say he's probably about 8 feet tall by 4 foot wide, and the background of it in particular is a very hard clay substance. You can definitely tell it was removed from a wall. I honestly wish that they would have taken his servants with him, possibly the reasons being that they either did not withstand time, they may not have held up well, or they may not have just been able to remove them due to Chinese restrictions or stealing at the time. A lot of pieces from that time period and a lot of pieces in China and Asia in general are taken without permission of the government. So we're lucky to have him here in Kansas City, Missouri, and I hope everyone that's interested in this definitely gets to come take a look at him. He's magnificent and absolutely beautiful. I wish you could really see the hand gesture. That's the only thing that's a little upsetting on this piece, especially with such iconic references in there to this symbol of power. It would be really great to have that in an actualization. But you can't be too choosy. So thank you all so much for listening to this. I hope this helped give an idea into what Buddhist art is depicting in the terms of the Guanyin. And thank you so much.